We're now going to take a look at a Vulgate Gospelbook that was created in the 8th century in Ireland. And this is also listed on the British Library's Catalogue of Illuminated Manuscripts. This particular work was very interesting to me because of something that was noted here in the description on the BL's site, that while we do know that this is an 8th century Irish Gospel book, it also later underwent a period of modernization where this particular book was actually updated in England in the 10th century. And that means that this exact text has different aspects that are from the Insular period in which it was originated, but that it does also show Carolingian influence from the time period in which it was updated. And in order to get a better look at how those two influences come into play in this particular book, we're going to be taking a look at two adjoining pages. This one right here, 49V, and then we'll later get a deeper look at this page right over here, page 50. Now, we'll start with this one right here, which is a look at the Apostle John. I'm going to dive into that in a moment, but first let's review the fact that gospel books were portions of the Bible that existed because in the Insular period there was not a singular volume of a Bible. Rather, they were smaller, portable books that were made up of different subsections of Bible stories. So, like this particular book is, as a gospel book, purely about stories told from the apostles about the life of Christ. The tales that were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so we didn't see those full Bibles until several hundred years later, towards the later Middle Ages. If we take a look specifically at this page, we're going to be able to see some of the Insular and Carolingian influences on this particular page. Now right here, this is a look at the Apostle John. It's a full page illustration. And we can see that off the bat, it does not look like the beautiful carpet pages that we know come from the Insular period, where it's just completely decorated tip to toe. Rather, we see on the side here some scraping that has been done to the parchment. You can see how there used to be this border of a sort of a rich blue color, and rather, as this book was updated, some of the paintings were scraped aside and overlaid on top right here. Now, from the Insular period, we do know that the apostles were linked to very specific animals, and we can see that here where we have the head of an eagle, which was the symbol in the Insular time for the Apostle John, who is right here. It can be a little difficult to see John's face, but it does look pretty realistic. This is a nice realistic painting of John with his nose here, deep set eyes right here, and a beard. And he's very proportional. And that is unlike the Insular period. During that time, we see holy figures such as the apostles were considered to be so holy that they would be painted in sort of a distorted manner. Their features would just be a little off, a little over large. And that's not the case here, so we can thank that to the updates that were made later on. And we can see that that's a bit more of the Carolingian influence in this particular case. So again, the Insular period is still represented in the linking of the eagle to John, but the Carolingian influence comes in through more realistic paintings of a person and in not being a full carpet page illustration here. Let's check out the second page that we wanted to see from this particular work. The adjoining page here shows a large decorated initial, the letter H, followed by 2 rows of text. And this is certainly also representative of both the Insular and Carolingian periods. We'll take a deeper look at it here. So if we zoom in, we can see that there is still very much an Insular period motif going on in that there are these interlocked knots here that still very much has that Celtic influence. You can kind of see it here in the snakes as well. But we have an updated Carolingian influence in that this particular page focuses much, much more on the text than it does on the illustrations that are meant to support the text for people who probably weren't able to read them at the time. So we have these two orderly rows of minuscule, and while I don't know if it's exactly Carolingian minuscule, this clearly is making a very strong effort at being legible. Perhaps this was touched up from the original. And we also can see that there are these initials that were gilded on in the margins of the work, right over here. And they are somewhat unattached to the text. What's unclear, and we can see it right here as well, what's unclear is if these initials were left as an unfinished portion from the first copy of this work that came in the 800s, or if they were a product of the updates that were made in the Carolingian period.